Srila Prabhupada ki. So, thank you for inviting me to speak on Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita is my favorite book, and today you have chosen my favorite verse. So that's very interesting. The 18th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita is a summary. In the first verse of the 18th chapter, in the commentary, Srila Prabhupada said, the Bhagavad-gita ends up with the end of the 17th chapter. But the 18th chapter is a summary. Krishna is emphasizing again the main points of Bhagavad-gita, the main points. And because Arjuna soon has to sit for the exam, he has to conduct the fighting Krishna consciousness. So Krishna, before the exam, is emphasizing the main points. And in the first 12 verses, Krishna has somewhat summarized the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita. And now from verse 13 till 17, he's speaking about Jnana, but especially about karma. Because the point here is, how can one be active and without getting reactions? That's the point. How is that possible? And that it addresses also, are we the doer? Are we not the doer? And Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, Prakati kriya manani guna karmana sarvasa ahankara vimuda atma kartamiti manyate. Krishna says one would think he is the doer in this world, because everything is done by material nature, but one who thinks himself the doer is a vimuda. A vimuda is a heavy word. Muda means as, vimuda means super as. That I traveled a lot with Prahlad Nanda Maharaj, and he went on book distribution in the airport in America, many places. And he said one time that a devotee was distributing books in the airport, and he came across someone from India, and he wanted to present him Srila Prabhupada's books, and the man said, "No, I don't want this." And the devotee then said to the man, then Krishna in Bhagavad-gita says you are a vimuda. No, that's a heavy word to say to an Indian, vimuda. And the man became very upset, and he called the police officer, he's calling me a vimuda. And the police officer said, vimuda. No idea what it was. But vimuda is a very heavy word, thinking oneself the doer in this world. That at the other side, Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, Nadate karchit papam natsheva sukritam vipam. Agyane sukritam vibhu. Yeah, it's Nadate karchit papam natsheva sukritam vibhu. Agyane na to count here. Anyway, I forget the Sanskrit, but it means Krishna says, I'm not responsible for all the actions, the pious and impious actions of the people. They are just doing that out of ignorance. So Krishna says, I'm not responsible. Krishna says, I'm also not a doer. So that's a little confusing. He said, we are not a doer, and then he says that I'm also not a doer. That I think it's 5. Na date karchit papam natshev sukritam vitam ajnanena pitam jnanam tenam yanti yantava. Yeah, people do these pious and impious activities because they are bewildered, but I'm not responsible, Krishna says, for their actions. So then, who is the doer? Are you the doer? Krishna is not the doer, we are not the doer. So who is the doer? That's explained in these verses. To what extent we are the doer. Krishna has said before in the 4th chapter that the intricacies of the law of karma are very difficult to understand. Very difficult to understand. When we see action in inaction and inaction in action, he sees things as they are. That I'm teaching Bhakti Shastri. I went many times to the whole course teaching, and I tell the students, I'm going to ask this question at your exam. Explain what's action in inaction and inaction in action. And I explain that, and at the exam, they come up with their wrong answer every time. So Krishna says the intricacies of action are very difficult to understand. That, inaction in action. What does it mean? This is spiritual action. Spiritual action is action done with the understanding that Krishna is a proprietor of everything, Krishna is the enjoyer of everything, and just done for his pleasure. That's spiritual action. If one is spiritual active, then one is materially inactive, because there is no reaction. There is no reaction. So, that's inaction in action. But there is also action in inaction. Those great yogis, they want to go to the Himalayas and give up all action. But they are not able. They have to breathe. They are sitting down on an ant, they kill the ant, they get a reaction. It's just not possible. It's not possible. So there's action even in inaction, reactions. But these intricacies of action are very difficult to understand. And Krishna, as referred in the previous verse, he said, I will now explain you 5 factors of action. And they are based on Vedanta Sutra, the Brahma Sutras. Although Krishna is speaking, he's referring to authority. To authority. He says here, O mighty armed Arjuna, according to Vedanta, there are 5 causes for the accomplishment of all action. Now learn these for me. Vedanta. So Vedanta, Veda, Ante, the end of knowledge, explains the purpose of the Vedas. What's the purpose of the Vedas? Sarvasya samritisha nivishta matta smitra nama pamsa vedasya sarvarami vavetya vedantaket vedavit eva chaham. Krishna says, I'm seated in everyone's heart. For me comes remembrance, knowledge and forgetfulness. There you have it already. Knowledge, forgetfulness, remembrance comes from Krishna. We are not the doer. Interesting. You think about that. And I'm to be known by all the Vedas. I'm the compiler of the Vedas. And I'm the object of knowledge of the Vedas. So, Vedanta gives the conclusion of the Vedas. And Lord Krishna refers to Vedanta, to authority. That's not the first time. Also, in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, 13.5, there it says, the knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of the activities is described by sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra, with all reasoning as the cause and effect. Again, the Vedanta Sutra. So, now, referring to this authority, because the Vedanta Sutra is based on the Upanishads. What are the Upanishads? Upanishads are a part of the Vedas. There are 4 Vedas, that the Rig Veda, Atharva Veda, Sama Veda, and Yajur Veda. 4 Vedas that they are coming from Brahma. Where did Brahma get the Vedas from? It's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, first verse. Janmadhyasyatam vadat itaratas sadis abhyaspharat tene Brahma hridaya adikave muyanti atsuya. Tene Brahma, to the heart he got this knowledge. Tene Brahma hridaya kava. Yeah. He got the knowledge from Krishna to the heart. We have learned this verse today. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pitivurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayantite. What does Krishna say there? When you are dedicated to serving me with love, pitivurvakam, dadami, I give, buddhi yoga, realized knowledge, he gives that to the heart. This is not scholarly knowledge. That's the realization of the knowledge he gets to the heart. Because if you can realize this knowledge, you can go back to the spiritual world. So we are also meant to realize this knowledge to the heart. It should not be theoretical knowledge. It has to be realized. And it's only realized when Krishna is pleased with serving him with love, which is devotional service. So these 4 Vedas are there, and each Veda has 4 parts. 4 parts. Because it's good to know how this knowledge relates to the Vedas. That otherwise, yes, we cannot explain it really with what is our authority. Our authority is the Vedas. And the Vedas, as each of these 4 Vedas, have 4 parts. The first part is called Samhita. The Samhita is original text, original Sanskrit text. And then the second part, each Veda has 4 parts, and the second part is called Brahmanas. And Brahmanas is the same text, but with guidance or indications how to pronounce it correctly. Because these Vedas were recited during sacrifices, and the effect of that dependent on the correct pronunciation was very important. And the third part is called Aranyaka. Aranya means forest. Because for each Vedas they did big sacrifices in the forest. And they did these sacrifices, and in the Aranyaka, there you find all the details, how to do the sacrifice, which spoon has to be used, everything is there. And then the 4th part of each Veda, the 4th part is the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the knowledge, the spiritual knowledge of the Vedas. So there are 108 Upanishads according to our tradition, but some say there are 160, some say less. But there are 12 most important Upanishads, but each Veda has its Upanishads. But this is the spiritual knowledge of the Vedas. And Bhagavad-gita is called Gita Upanishad. Gita Upanishad means it presents the essence of all these Upanishads. Therefore, Gita is very important. Although these Vedas belong to the Shruti category, they call. Original Vedas spoken. Shruti, it means it has been heard. It's coming from the Supreme Lord down to the sages being heard. But you have also Smriti, commentaries. And one of the commentaries are the Puranas. The Puranas are the commentaries which explain the Vedas. And the most important is the Bhagavad Purana. It's called Srimad Bhagavatam. These are the Puranas. And you have also the Itihasas, which are the epics, Mahabharata. And you have the Ramayana. And that's called the Smriti, commentaries of the Vedas. And in the Smriti you find Mahabharata, and in Mahabharata you find Bhagavad-gita. But Bhagavad-gita is not a Smriti, it's Shruti, it's a part of Shruti in the Smriti of the Mahabharata. Anyway, that's technical. But the essence of all the Upanishads is also found in the Brahma Sutras of Vedanta Sutra, where Krishna is referring to here. Because the verse that we will learn today is directly related to these Brahma Sutras. The Brahma Sutras are aphorism. Vedanta Sutra, aphorism means very cryptic knowledge. Cryptic. Difficult to understand. That it starts, the first is Janmadhyasya. The absolute truth is a cause of everything. Janmadhyasya. And the Bhagavatam is a commentary of this, is the bona fide commentary of this Brahma Sutras, Vedanta Sutras. And it starts with the same, Janmadhyasya. Janmadhyasya tam vayatitarates sabihya svarat. That shows that the Bhagavatam is a commentary of Vedanta Sutra. So, Krishna refers to Vedanta Sutra, and then we have this verse which will explain us whether we are the doer or not. So, before we read from the Bhagavad-gita, we glorify the speaker, which is Lord Krishna, with the words Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, now the translation. The place of action, the body, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the supersoul, these are the 5 factors of action. Purport. The word adhisthanam refers to the body. The soul within the body is acting to bring about the results of activity and is therefore known as karta, the doer. That the soul is a knower and the doer is stated in the Shruti, Esha Idrashta Shasta, Prashna Upanishad 4.9. It is also confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra by the verses Yonteva and Karta Sastrar Tavatvat. The instruments of action are the senses, and by the senses the soul acts in various ways. For each and every action there is a different endeavor, but all of one's activities depend on the will of the supersoul who is seated within the heart as a friend. The Lord is a supercause. Under these circumstances, He who is acting in Krishna consciousness under direction of the Supersoul situated within the heart is naturally not bound by any activity. Those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the Supreme Will, the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Adhistanam tata karta karanam sa pritachvidam vividas sa pritachshista devam sharesaiva panshanam. The place of action, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the Supersoul, these are the 5 factors of action. 5 factors of action, every action, Krishna says. Whatever we do, these 5 factors are there. And Krishna will say in the next verse, one who does not consider these 5 factors, and think himself the only doer, is not very intelligent. He cannot see things as they are. So it's not easy to see things as they are. Krishna is warned before the intricacies of karma, of work, are very difficult to understand. It's not easy to understand that we are not the doer. He gives 5 factors here. And these 5 factors, that they are present in every action. That many people think that they are the only doer, the controller. But is it like that? We are in America, I think you all know Superman. Superman, the one who was playing this role of Superman, he became very rich. The American dream fulfilled. He had his own many houses and his own farm and his own horses. So one day he was riding on the horse, but somewhere or another the horse hit something and he was whipped down from the horse and broke his back. And from that moment, nothing he could do anymore. Finished. So whether we can do things or not, it depends on these 5 factors. So, and we are only one of these 5. The word karta is mentioned, the doer. And that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, this karta is false ego. And another commentator says, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, it's the Atma, the soul. And Srila Prabhupada, he follows mostly Baladev Vidyabhushan. So he said, it's the soul, the karta. How is the soul the doer? Only by desire. That's really the only thing what the soul does. The spirit soul is in the heart. And the symptom of his presence is consciousness. And activities becoming attached. Attachment means desire. And that's our only free will we have. We can become attached. It's up to us to become attached to things in this world or to become attached to Krishna. That's our free will, really. But then, let's look at the other 5 factors. It's like a man is making a clay pot on a table. It's on a table which turns and he makes clay pots. So what is producing the clay pot? That one may say it's the potter. But not only the potter, he has also his instruments, that the moving table, and he has the material, the clay, and there's also he must have clients who desire to buy it, otherwise he cannot do it. So there are different factors there. We cannot just say the pot is made by the potter. No, there are different factors combined. And the first factor mentioned here is adhisthanam, is the body. That we need a body for action. The body means also the subtle body. That without a body. And who controls the body? Do we control the body? Do you control your heartbeat? Do you control your digestion? We even don't know how it goes. That we don't control much of this body. No, Krishna says that Maya attraction prakati chucharicha characharam. That Krishna says there that I'm the superintendent of material nature. As a super soul, he controls. And that's another element, the super soul. That, yes, Devam is called here, the super soul. Adhishtanam, the body, tata karta, the soul who desires. Then karanam, the instruments. Instrument, the potter has his instrument. Instruments, the senses, the eyes. That's this philosophy from Vedanta Sutra. It's very close to Sankhya. Sankhya is analyzing the elements, counting the elements. Sankhya. 24 elements or more elements. That yes, you have the working senses, the information gathering senses. 2 times 5, that's 10. That object of the senses, that's 15. Then you have earth, air, ether, water, fire, mind, intelligence, false ego. These are 8 elements more, is 23. 24 is the super soul. That anyway, these are all, yeah, and 24 is the unmanifested material modes of nature, the pradhan. Anyway, that's technical, but yeah, I'll analyze it like that. This Vedanta Sutra that explains the details how it works. That so you have the karanam, the senses, and then petachvidam, prividasa petachshasta. This word sesta, different kinds of endeavors, Krishna says. And that's difficult to understand, because the soul is a doer by desiring, but what is then this endeavor? It seems that endeavor comes from the soul, but not always. In 270 of Bhagavad-gita, I think it's 270 of Bhagavad-gita, and that's interesting to get a deeper understanding in this. That this verse apoyamanam atla pasishtam samutana papavishanti sattvat tatvat kamayam pavishanti sarvesa santim apnoti nakami kami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not a man who strives to satisfy such desires. That's interesting. Krishna says that desires pop up into the mind. And the devotee is not disturbed by these desires popping up into the mind. How can we understand that? That are desires coming from the soul or not? Krishna speaks about desires here that pop up into the mind. That to understand that first, and I hope I'm not going to confuse you too much, but I'll try to explain this, that the soul desires, and when we have a desire comes up into the mind. But the mind is a material energy. Okay? Mind is material energy. Who controls the material energy? It's a super soul. So the soul desires, and Krishna, he captures that desire and brings the desire into our mind. So he knows our desire before we know it. That's not easy to understand, right? But it's a fact. But there are two kinds of desires that are coming into the mind. There are desires that come directly from the spirit soul. But there are also other desires which Krishna places in your mind. And why does he do that? Because these are desires which we have tried to fulfill in previous lives. But what's happening with a material desire if you try to fulfill it? Tayate visyapum sanghas te subhajayate sanghas sanyate kama kama kod vijayate kod bhavati sama smiti bhipima smiti bhim sabadunyasa buddhyo vyavasainat. Yeah, that's, you meditate on things in this world and you think, I'm going to enjoy. And one creates expectations of enjoyment. But when the enjoyment comes, it's not what expected. And one becomes frustrated. It's like a fish. A fish is coming and sees at the end of a fishing line a bat. And the fish thinks, I'm going to enjoy. And then it takes the bat and is hooked. And the fisherman cuts up the fish, takes the fish from the hook, cuts it open, inside out, put it on the frying pan. And the fish becomes fried. We become fried if we try to fulfill material desires. It never works out. Krishna says that, Dushpurananadenacha, in Bhagavad-gita, that Avtam jnanam etana jnana nityavarnam kamrupina kantya dushpurananadenacha, it can never be fulfilled and it burns like fire. So that's characteristic of material desire. It never gets fulfilled. So, and we have so many unfulfilled desires in previous lives. And we have forgotten them, but Krishna did not forget the desires of our previous lives. They are still there in our subconsciousness in seed form. And Krishna takes, not all at the time, but sometimes takes these desires and put it in our mind, and it pops up. Now, there are two possibilities. The conditioned soul thinks that, yes, that's my desire. Yes, and this time it will work, let's go for it. But it never happens. A devotee is not disturbed by it. It pops up in his mind, and the devotee looks at it in his mind. Oh, there's a material desire. If I fulfill that, Krishna will not be happy, and I will get karma. I don't want it. And then it disappears forever. That's a devotee. So sometimes this endeavor comes up into the mind. And if we identify with it, then it becomes our desire. So endeavors comes up into the mind. These desires come up. And that's also placed there by the super soul. So that's the Shasta. That's one explanation. There may be other explanations, because Krishna says intricacies of karma are very difficult to understand. So there may be more to that. And then Devam, the super soul. That's the fifth action. So one can say, I commit a murder, and I can claim, based on this verse, I'm not a doer here. I'm only 1/5. You have to blame God, not me. But that will not work, because the other four factors will depend on our desire. If we desire it, then we put a button of material nature. That whatever we desire in this world is like putting a button, and material nature becomes active, and you get reactions for your actions. So a devotee learns not to put that button. No way to put that button. He becomes the observer first. He observes his desires. And he makes sure that his desires are in line with what Krishna desires. And that's the point in the purport Srila Prabhupada makes. But all one's activities depend on the will of the super soul, situated in the heart. That's important knowledge. Whatever we do depends on the will of the super soul. Krishna says, I give remembrance, knowledge and forgetfulness. That's interesting information. Sometimes you sit for an exam and your memory go blank. What can you do? It depends all on Krishna. But the devotee knows that. And he knows, oh Krishna, I'm going to do this exam, and then I will use all my skills to please you, to serve you. I promise you. So please help me, give me knowledge, so that I can do it as a service for you. You can try it out by your next exam, but you have to be firm in your promise that not using it for getting money or sense gratification, but for serving Krishna. Krishna will help you. It's a hint. So this knowledge gives power. Devotees become powerful because they become just servants of Krishna, acting without false ego. And they know that all my capabilities depend on the Supreme Lord. That everything what I'll be able to do. So many lessons we can learn from these verses. So the Lord is a super cause. Under these circumstances, he who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the super soul situated within the heart is naturally not bound by any activity. So that is Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is doing what the super soul wants me to do. So that's also always the question of a devotee. What does Krishna wants me to do? I traveled a lot with Prahlad Maharaj with my Siksha Guru, and he tells that story. There's a story he often tells that he was asking Srila Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada, how do I know what Krishna wants me to do? Srila Prabhupada looked upon him with compassion and said, you will do the wrong thing. So that's the point. On our own we will do the wrong thing. We must learn the scriptures. It's not that the direction of the super soul that Krishna is going to direct is different from within the heart than what he says in Bhagavad-gita. No. Krishna refers to authorities here. He says Guru, Sadha and Shastra. He refers to authorities. And that's what we must learn. We must learn to see through authorities. And then we will understand what Krishna wants us to do. That Guru, Sadha and Shastra. And then when we follow the instruction of the spiritual master, when the spiritual master is the representative of Krishna, then we act to please Krishna. And then we are not responsible for our actions. Krishna takes responsibility. He says that in Bhagavad-gita, Sarva dharmam parityam mamakam saram vacham tvam sarva papayam mokshayishyami machva. Say, don't worry, give up all these other yoga systems, just surrender unto me. What does it mean, surrender to Krishna? What does it mean? Surrender to Krishna is explained in Bhagavad-gita 3:30. It says, surrender all your works unto me, Arjuna. And he says, act without false ego, without thinking you are the proprietor, without thinking you are the enjoyer. Act in that way, and that's surrender. That means following Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad-gita. These are foremost instructions. Chakyarta karmano yatra loko yam karma bandhana. Bhagavad-gita 3:9. Everything you do as a sacrifice for me. Not for selfish, but for him. Just to please him. And that's surrender. That not acting about what we like and don't like, but learn to act about what Krishna likes, what he does not like. And that's the same thing as what the spiritual master wants you to do and not to do. And that's what Srila Prabhupada in 241 calls Vyavasa Atmika Buddhi, one-pointed intelligence. One-pointed intelligence means before you do something, you think, will my spiritual master be pleased with me doing that? That simple thing. What pleases the spiritual master is what pleases Krishna. The instruction of the spirit of Krishna is surrender unto me. And the spiritual master says, surrender unto Krishna. They say the same thing. That's the bona fide spiritual master. And then there is no reaction. And that's what action in Krishna consciousness is about. Always do what Krishna wants us to do. And further in this chapter, he does that in a few places. Krishna said, if you do that, you have this result, and if you do something else, you have that result. So he says, Machita, it's 1858. Machita sarva durgani mat prasad rishasi hatvam tvam ankaram nasushas vinakshati. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. But if you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So Krishna says, if you become conscious of me, conscious of Krishna means also conscious of his instructions. That's we must be concerned what Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita. It's not I love Krishna, no. No, but does Krishna wants? Because love means pleasing the beloved, and then you must know what the beloved pleases. Therefore you must know Krishna's instructions. So, and the basis of this instruction is Bhagavad-gita. And so, therefore, it's so auspicious that you are studying Bhagavad-gita every week. That's really the means for making advancement. If you combine it with the Bhagavatam gives the practical way how to realize all these instructions. In the Bhagavatam, nearly in every purport, Srila Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad-gita. They are connected. This is the ABC, and how to realize it. In terms of values, practical life, it's the Bhagavatam. So it's going together. So Krishna says, if you follow my directions, all obstacles of conditioned life you will be able to cross over. But he says, if you do not act according to my direction, and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature you will have to be engaged in warfare. You will be falsely directed. It's back to birth, death, old age, and disease. So Krishna explains this in Bhagavad-gita, and then Krishna says to Arjuna that, so deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do. One devotee said to me, that's really the instruction of Bhagavad-gita that I've been following all my life. Then do what you wish to do. But of course Krishna says, first deliberate and then do what you wish to do. Any questions? Yes?
Well, I have a question about your explanation of the Vedas, and then a question about action. So actually two questions about action. So I'll do the action questions first.
Yeah.
You were explaining that our desires come from the soul and Krishna's remembrance of what the soul desired in the past life.
Two kinds, yeah.
But in the 13th chapter of the Gita, Krishna's explaining Purusha Prakriti Slohi Bhakti Prakriti Janguna.
Yeah.
That it's the, to what degree does our desires come from our fact that we're in a particular material situation. And then before that, Krishna goes to say, Kara Karnam Kartvidve Hetu Prakriti Ujjate, that the cause is material nature. So we're put by karma in a particular body. We associate with the modes of nature accordingly, and that's where that seems like another place that our desires come from.
Yeah, the cause is material nature of everything what happens in the world, but we are the architect of our involvement in this material nature, and that's by our own desire. And that's a fact. Yes, by our own desire, we are determining our future. That if we desire for something in this world, we will become entangled and we activate material nature. If we desire just to please Krishna, then there will be no activation of material nature, purification of the heart. Anyway, it's a simple thing.
Due to my karma, I take birth in a family of thieves. So as I grow up, they are reinforcing my desire to be a thief. So that desire, or maybe I got birth in that situation because of my desire, but now that desire is being reinforced. So seems to make it very difficult based on my karma to have another desire.
Prahlad Maharaj was in the same situation. He was born in a family of demons.
He did get a break.
That,
His mother got to the Narad Muni's ashram.
yeah, but still he got the influence of the demoniac. And it's just it's the mercy of Narada Muni that he remembered his instructions of being in the womb, because his spiritual memory was revived, and that was a special situation. But yes, the modes, the family where we are born, it all influences our situation. And that's explained in Bhagavad-gita in the 6th chapter. But when we have the path of devotional service, then there are two possibilities. We take birth, either we have a long practice or a short practice. The short practice, we take birth in a family of rich people, first going to the heavenly planets, enjoying for so many years, coming back and in a rich family, so that you can again perform devotional service and not need to work too hard. But if one has a long practice, devotees would chant 16 rounds, they have a long practice, that they will be born in a family of advanced spiritualists. So it's all to your previous karma in which birth you come. But the environment is the environment as a great influence, and it will be more difficult one who is born in a demoniac situation and is influenced by the lower modes. It's very difficult to come out. But we have to recognize that most of us in the West were in that situation, and many of us became devotees. How did that happen? It's the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. It's the mercy of his followers who are spreading this. So that if we are sincere, Krishna will help us. But certainly the environment has a great influence. It's not easy to practice Krishna consciousness in the middle of the city, especially when you are living alone. It will be very difficult. Maya is there every moment. You have to learn to live in association of devotees to be protected by that. But yes, in that sense, in some sense, material nature is, because you have these 5 factors, is going to determine your destiny. You can see one who is taking birth in a family of butchers and become a butcher also. You know what the future will be. So it's according to our karma, we get what we deserve. And it's an entanglement. But the way out is the mercy of the pure devotee. Krishna, he delegates the power to give Krishna consciousness to others, to those who have bhakti, who have the seed of bhakti. And these are the preachers of Krishna consciousness. The Madhyamedikar Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. So Krishna delegates this mercy to his devotees. Therefore, it's up to us to preach and try to attract people, and even despite their imprisonment in these lower modes. Something else? Yes, there was a question there. Yeah.
So could we say the pivotal point is pure love, because in the action and what was it? Action and not no action. So a lot of time, because if we don't really have love, even though we think we have love, but it's tinged, and we're still getting some reaction from the thing we think it's no action, so we're still getting involved, and we're getting like tied up in that. So, and the other thing was, we may want something very bad, and we think we have devotion, but we don't have devotion. It's in like it's a like a delusional type of thing in our head. So it's not something that we can force. Just because I want devotion. But if I don't really have devotion in my heart, I cannot force devotion. So does it really depend on God? Because if we don't really have that purity, even though we think we have it, but we don't, then we're still going to get entangled in what we think we don't have, but we do have, attachment, or like totally connected to this world. So it seems like it's not a dilemma, but it's complicated. So in order for us not to get entangled again, we would have to have that pure love. So we won't have to, be born again and like be born in an aristocratic, wealthy, high IQ, all these things that we can have in this world. It seems to me that that would be the pivotal point of, the pure love. I don't know. Maybe I kind of went off, but
there are two things. There is the attainment of a pure heart, that then one can act out of love of God. But before we attain that state, we can also act on the liberated platform, is called. There are two different things. One does not need to be a pure devotee to please Krishna with love. Iya yasya hare dasye karmana manasagiri Nicholas apyavastesu jivan mukta sa uchate. That is a verse from Nectar of Devotion that Srila Prabhupada many times quoted. And he said, and this verse is simply saying, when we uses his body, mind, and words in the service of the Lord, that he is acting on the liberated platform, is called Jivan Mukti, acting on the liberated platform. So that's what Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita. Tad buddhyas tad atmas tad nishtas tad paina kachanta punaraftam khanidhirtuta kalmasa. One should act with body, mind and words, and that will cleanse the heart completely. That acting with body, mind and words in the Bhagavad-gita is called acting as sannyas, completely dedicated to the service of the Lord. So that's acting out of love. Love is not a sentiment in the mind. Love is action, pleasing the beloved. And that is the point. But what's important there is that we come to that genuine desire to use our body, mind and words always in the service of the Lord. And that's factual love. That's love. That love is not something, not a concept or a feeling I have for someone, affection. No, it's action. That's so, and that should be understood. So you don't have to be pure, but you have to act pure. And by acting pure, you will become pure very quickly. So that principle is there. Someone asked Srila Prabhupada, how many pure devotees are there in ISKCON? Srila Prabhupada looked at his secretary and said, how many devotees do we have in ISKCON today? So he considered all the devotees as pure devotees. Does that mean that they all were pure in heart and had love for Krishna? No. But they were surrendered to the service of Krishna, especially in the 70s. In the 70s, joining the Hare Krishna movement was you join the temple and you forget about everything. And you go out on Harinam, book distribution, they were completely surrendered. And then Krishna reciprocates, because that's love. That's love. And Krishna reciprocates. And this period that we had so many surrendered devotees, although the surrender was only for a few years, but very powerful. That's called the Hare Krishna explosion. At that time, we distributed millions of books and thousands of devotees joined. And everyone wanted to join because they could see these Hare Krishnas, they are happy. And the happiness is coming from that, by that service. You forget about everything else and you feel Krishna when you serve. So that's love. That we have sometimes different conceptions about love, but that's what Srila Prabhupada teaches us. And it's not just a concept, it's a realization. Devotees experience that. It's just not just some words, it's experience. And to be convinced of that, you must learn, you must experience it and do it. And it's so wonderful. Right? Something else? Yes, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was thinking about what you were talking about when you said that we have unfulfilled desires from past lives, which basically it's like a test for a devotee, right? Because you said something like you know, they think the thought and they just like acknowledge it and they kind of let it pass. But I was connecting it with ideas like, okay, so sorry, give me a second. So unfulfilled desires, could it not be also connected to like in a past life perhaps you tried to become a devotee and you didn't, right? You weren't able to do it. So now in this life, Krishna comes to your mind, he paves you a way towards the devotees, and now you start to take the path of the Vedas, right? So could this not also be a unfulfilled desire, or like connecting it with having soul ties to people, like having that connection with Guru? Is it not like from already a connection that you've had? So is it just a test for the devotee, or unfulfilled desires could also be the way that one finds their way towards the path?
Then I'm going back to Haridas Thakur.
Mm-hmm.
Lord Chaitanya is asking Haridas Thakur, so please tell me about the glories of the holy name. Haridas Thakur said that that's, I think, why you're asking me? I'm completely unqualified. You are the Supreme Lord. That how can I know? But if you make me speak, I will be able to say something. Then Haridas Thakur explains Krishna has three energies, and the first is Achit Vaibhav. Achit Vaibhav is the spiritual potency which generates unlimited bliss And this Achitva bhav is the cause of is the energy which is prevalent in all the spiritual worlds, in the holy dharmas. But then you have a second energy, is Achitva bhav, dull material matter, which we find in this material world. And the third energy is the jiva, we. And we are also spiritual. And the jiva is spiritual and has unlimited, as the potency to expand his consciousness into unlimited spiritual bliss. But that potency is fully achieved in the spiritual world. So that's what we desire. We all desire to be happy. And to be happy means to love and to be loved. That's what we want. But that's only available on the spiritual platform. We belong to the spiritual world. So we have all this desire for this permanent, unlimited bliss. And that's there in our heart. Everyone knows that. And that's now dormant. Our desire for Krishna consciousness, with this desire of this unlimited bliss, is dormant. It is there. Everyone has this desire. But the problem is, most of us want to fulfill this desire by exploiting dull matter. It doesn't work. You have just to direct it. So that desire is innate to the spirit soul, cannot be disconnected. That's always there, that spiritual desire. It's now temporarily covered over because we try to fulfill that desire in matter, but we have just to redirect it and direct it to the Chitva bhav, connect with the spiritual energy. But to do that, there are three conditions. You must first understand very deeply Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan means understanding who is Krishna. Who am I? And what is our relationship? If you don't know who Krishna is, you cannot, and you don't know who we are, you cannot go into a relationship. That's what Haridas Thakur said. The first thing is Sambandha Gyan. And then, when one understands that, one can engage in a relationship. And that's a process of devotional service. So all these material desires from previous lives is that same desire to love and to be loved, but trying to fulfill it on a material plane. It doesn't work. That we have to direct it to the spiritual. How do we connect with the spiritual energy? How do we connect with the material energy? With the material energy we explained. The fish who wants to then enjoy the bath, and that's what's happening. But whatever you meditate on this world to enjoy, you become entangled and you get fright, frustrated, you get suffering. But we have to learn to connect with the spiritual energy. And that spiritual life, that desire is there. But it has to be directed correctly. Mahatmanastu mamparta devim pragatyashvata. The Mahatma knows how to take shelter of the divine spiritual energy. And how do we do that? We do that by Satatam kirtayantamam yadanta sadritavadha. That means that Satatam, always, Kirtan, glorify the Supreme Lord. So glorifying the Supreme Lord means chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, but also hearing about Krishna, hearing about his pastimes. Then you get to know who Krishna is. That knowledge is important. Therefore, 4th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, and so there Krishna explains the difference between you and me, Arjuna, is that you forget because you change body. I don't forget. I'm unborn. I'm appearing by my own sweet will, by my Atma Maya, and my body never deteriorates. I'm unborn, never changed body. That's God. So we have to understand who the Supreme Lord is. And part of this Sambandha Gyan we are learning today, that how Krishna organizes this material nature in such a way that we have the freedom to choose. That it's up to us. We connect with the spiritual energy, with the material energy. How do we connect with the spiritual energy? It starts also with dhyate, meditation, but meditation on spiritual objects. And what are the spiritual objects? That Krishna's holy name, yes. That Krishna's words in Bhagavad-gita. The deity of Krishna. Prasadam. It's not so difficult to meditate on. And that's what we have to learn, to meditate on Krishna and to connect always with Him. Yat karosi yat asyas, yat yosi dadasyat, yat tapasyasi kantya, that goes from at arpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you give away, whatever sacrifice you do, whatever austerity you do it as an offering to me. So, that means learning to 24 hours a day to connect our consciousness with Krishna. That means many of you are working, right? You work during the day, that you have a home, many are married, so what do? You have a home, you have to work for paying the house, or the apartment, or whatever. Then, yes, what do? You put a picture of Krishna in your house and you worship Krishna. And the house becomes a temple. Then when you work for paying the temple. You become spiritualized. And your children, you educate them to become devotees. And you worship Krishna in your house. Then you are maintaining your family, you are maintaining Krishna's devotees. It becomes devotional service. So in that way, connect our lives with Krishna, and that will give us great satisfaction. Then fulfillment of this desire to be blissful and develop real love will start. Anyway, does that help to understand?
Well, thank you, Maharaj, very much for it. But I was really just asking if all desires are bad, like having the desire to be with Krishna, having the desire to be with your guru, that must come from a good place. To come to a place of realization where you're like, okay, I'm going to take this path and I'm going to pursue this. That comes from somewhere. It doesn't just like pop up like, oh, I'm gonna switch and I'm gonna do this. Like it comes from somewhere of the soul, somewhere deep, somewhere of unfulfilled desires. So my question was, those desires, those spiritual desires, aren't those good desires? Like, because you said something like, devotee feels the desire and just like let it pass. But those desires are in some way what make devotees want to get on the path. So I was just asking if some desires are...
When I spoke about desires popping out and up into the mind, and I was referring to material desires. Spiritual desires are very good. Desires related to Krishna. But they rarely pop up in this material world in your mind. Maya will not allow that. It's very, very rare that. But if you are sincere, Krishna will give you special experiences. That's especially, Krishna reciprocates. And I give you an example of this. When I was just started, I started to chant 16 rounds. That's 30 years ago. And just a few days after I decided to start 16 rounds, I got a dream. And in my dream, Srila Prabhupada was sitting for me on a Vyasa-san. And I was sitting with different devotees. Srila Prabhupada was sitting on a Vyasa-san, and he had in his hand some booklets. And he took one booklet, he looked at me and said, "This is your passport for the spiritual world." And he gave it to me. And then he raised his hand. And now you have to work on your visa. So you have to become qualified. So Krishna may give you such experiences, and he will guide you. But this is not a daily affair. But Krishna does that to give you experience. He did that also to Narada Muni in his previous life. When he was chanting Hare Krishna, he was not completely pure. He appeared in his heart, and he was full of bliss. But then a voice came and said, "Oh, you are not really qualified yet. So, you are not really qualified yet, but I gave you the experience." And after that, he disappeared from his heart. But then this remembrance of that experience gave him such much spiritual power that he was so attracted to the chanting. Yes, that we have to learn to distinguish between spiritual and material desires. But what desire is spiritual is desires which are in agreement with Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. That is, we have to verify and not just think that our desire is spiritual. You have to verify with the scriptures. Krishna will guide you from within, not in a different way as from Bhagavad-gita. But is the guidance within coming from your material mind, or does it coming from the super soul? You have to verify that. But if one becomes pure, Krishna gives direct guidance. But that's a very high platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's time for Kirtan. Kirtan. Okay. Well.